They are in a tiny tent somewhere in the frozen desperation of the Arctic Ocean. Two men, Canadian Richard Weber and Russian Misha Malikov, are about to become the first to ski unaided to the North Pole and back. It is the toughest and most basic Arctic expedition of our time. For 122 days and nights, they face temperatures that drop to -60. They have lugged and heaved their sleds over 1,200 backbreaking miles, zigzagging across the polar ice. One physical slip, one simple mental error, could still mean almost certain death. They battle the incredible cold by convincing themselves it doesn't exist. They battle the fatigue by eating raw bacon and butter. And they battle the incredible loneliness by clinging to life on the internet.
ETA at wartime is 3 days from tomorrow.
In a network of computers, it's not the MIPS and chips and whatnot that's most important. It's what goes on between the people using them that makes them really powerful. A reminder from Sun Microsystems, proud to support this PBS program.
Hello, I'm Scott Simon. The more you learn about the internet, the more the internet can help you learn. Today, a connection to the internet can put some of the resources of the best libraries and museums of the world at your fingertips. Cyberspace is the newest frontier in education. Students are discovering, absorbing, and sharing information in a new way. And as we'll find out, the internet is not just changing the teaching process, but it's changing the teachers themselves. As Richard Weber and Misha Malikov came to the end of their trek, a handful of students from Confederation High School in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, were on their way to meet them. But they too have spent the last 4 months in uncharted territory, exploring the use of the internet in education. They've been running the website and the email connection for the Arctic Explorers. And because they weren't prepared to let something like exam time stop their trip to celebrate the end of the Arctic adventure, they've also become the first students in the history of Confederation High and probably any other school on the continent to take part of their exams at 23,000 feet. Student Kara Philby was one of the group leaders of the project.
It was once in a lifetime experience. I think I would have done it if I had to write 5 exams on the plane. We had to write our exams on the plane. I still would have gone. Just you're open to so many different lifestyles, different opportunities. It's a part of the country which I had personally never seen before, and I don't know if I ever would have taken it upon myself to go see it.
Officially called Follow Us, the project became the event of the year at Confederation High. The 50 students who ran it became the pivotal link for some 300 other schools around the world who signed up to follow the trek on the internet.
Send us letters.
It became an opportunity to turn an Arctic exploration into an educational adventure, where the students took control of a very complicated and involved program. It was in part the idea of Confederation School Administrator John Hindle.
They felt they could contact people, they could make relationships over distant countries, they could set aside cultural backgrounds and language barriers, and feel that they really could control the project and do this on their own, that there was no project that was too big for them. So the internet being the communication device was that door that just sort of suddenly opened, and they said, I think we could do anything now.
They averaged about 60 email messages and questions every day from the various schools. All of them were channeled through Confederation High. Some were researched and answered here, and some sent out over the net to the explorers. A German satellite, which passed over the Arctic Ocean every 100 minutes, sent the email down to Weber and Malikov, who, with a battery-operated hand receiver, were able to treat the whole process just like normal email, though perhaps just a tad colder than normal.
And there is message for us. Richard, couldn't you...
What type of Russian news would you like to receive? Question mark.
When they finally made it back to Resolute Bay, there to meet them were the students from Confederation High. Students who had followed them every day of their trip, relaying the messages that had meant so much to Misha Malakoff.
Thank you very much. Good job, and I would say even it's not just simple job, it's special job. What we were waiting all the time. Richard, what we are doing in the evening, tapsat. Time, batteries on my clothing to warm tapsat. Remember the situation with batteries here. And what's the time? Okay, in 15 minutes, communication. Richard preparing messages and other things. Communication. No communication, no answer from you. Upset next morning. And that's why actually one day when we were a message, please check it every day, because for us it was real psychological support. What we did, what you did actually. Yeah, very serious. Thanks a lot. Good job.
Richard Weber, the other explorer, lives near Ottawa and has kept in touch with the students at Confederation High.
For us, it was it's a big plus on the ice to know that there's a lot of people, you know, counting on you and just hoping for your success. And it motivates you. It helps you, you know, keeping going and putting one foot in front of the other, which is, you know, one foot in front of the other is most of the secret of traveling on the Arctic Ocean.
By using the internet to communicate with the adventurers, the young people at this high school learned a lot more about the net and the Arctic than they first realized. And their teachers learned that using the internet as an educational tool required that they take a fresh look at their profession.
I have a sporting background, a little bit of sporting background, and I think coach is the same word that comes to me. A coach for me was someone who taught me some basic skills and then let me play the game and had to stand on the sidelines while I played the game. And in that way, this is the way I felt about this project. We taught them some basic skills on how to get on the internet, how to build web pages, how to search, how to communicate, how to do list servers. And then we simply had to stand on the sidelines while they played the game. It's somewhat threatening because you never know the outcome of the game. But we had a winning team in this project.
I guess for me, I always had the misconception that internet was for people who spent a lot of time on the computers, and that's all they did was spend time on their computers. They didn't really do much of anything else, and they knew everything about it, every little square corner about the internet. And on my part, that was a very large misconception, because anybody can use it. It's accessible to everyone and anyone who wants to access it. And to me, it's opened my eyes to a whole different world. There's so much diversity out there, so many more opinions, so many more thoughts, so many more activities that people can partake in. And it's just an eye-opener, is basically what it is. And it makes you realize that you don't really know as much as you think you know, because there's a lot of people out there who know a lot more and who are willing to share that information with you. And all they ask in return is that you share yours.
In education, like almost everywhere else on the net, the impetus has come from the grassroots up, but not from the top down. The educational establishment is discovering that individual schools, educators, and parents are simply unwilling to wait for it to catch up and introduce the net in a traditional, widespread, and orderly manner. Mike Roberts is a senior policy advisor in the field of education.
You can go around the country today and you find little brush fires lighted all over the country of people who aren't waiting. You find school, you know, I'm an advisor to a school district over on the San Mateo County coast side where the teachers and some of the parents got together and put the school on the internet. And all they had was a very lukewarm blessing from the hierarchy that this was okay.
Guys.
Just about any morning near Palo Alto, California, you can find Mike Roberts running towards the day ahead. Mr. Roberts is a vice president of EDUCOM, a consortium of some 600 universities and colleges set up to help shape public policy on information technology and education, and increasingly in how it affects teaching from kindergarten to the 12th grade. Mr. Roberts was the first executive director of the Internet Society and a leading thinker on the future of the net in education.
It's without a doubt the single most important tool in the revolution in K-12 education. The model we've had for a long time, essentially, and to overstate it slightly, is of locking up the teacher in the classroom all day with a bunch of unruly kids is going to give way very rapidly. The teachers now have the ability to spend time, especially from home, now that, you know, part of what the internet is doing is it's creating an environment in which the teachers and the students can interact outside of the classroom and outside of the school day. I mean, this is, for universities, this is old hat. I mean, we've had computers at home. We've been treating the internet as a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phenomenon for years, and now that's filtering down into the lower levels of education. It's changing. Teachers never had, you know, the teachers' interaction with each other tended to be in the lunchroom over lunch. And with the parents, it was at parent-teachers night, you know, once or twice a year. Now the network catalyzes and enables a whole different level of dialogue.
The net has introduced a new factor to the education debate, for not only can it change what and how students learn, it also puts into question the whole notion of where they learn. And for those who choose to educate their children at home, it has remarkable potential. Bonnie Bedford, her husband, and 4 children live in a small town in the Pacific Northwest, where homeschooling isn't that unusual, and where the internet has become an increasingly useful addition to the process.
Okay, you get your choice. You can go see the moon, Mars, Jupiter. Jupiter's the 5th planet from the sun and the largest. Go back up. I think the photograph of it is up there.
What a weird planet.
It's a wonderful tool. It has really, for some reason, it seems to accelerate the speed at which they can absorb information. The computer itself is a great tool. It helps their writing. To type something over, and we hadn't typewriter before, write it longhand, sort of inhibits your creativity for creative writing, whatever. A computer has it makes everything so easy. And the internet's the same way. They have a problem, I don't know the answer, I'm not an encyclopedia, it's easy. Go, like my mother used to say, look it up in the dictionary. He's playing with the dinosaur program now, but I don't know that there's actually a dinosaur called a dynamite.
Dynamite!
New species.
Bonnie Bedford claims her children are at least at the educational level of kids who attend normal classrooms, and that using the internet as a resource has become as natural to them as opening a book, dialing a phone number, or making a sandwich. Their use of the net has become not so much a skill as a reflex.
In simple things like having a problem with their fish, we can go online and find far more in a couple minutes than we could down at the local library. And it just exposes them to so many things. We take the tour of the Louvre. Now, I'm not going to take 6 people to Paris anytime soon. It's beyond our budget. But we can go online, and my 13-year-old, who's, as you saw, is completely interested in movies and everything, was totally fascinated by the medieval paintings that they were showing. The clothing, the fact that the dogs were on the table eating out of people's dishes, and it's just exposes them to even surfing through. They'll flip on something that's of interest, and that interest may turn into a career. And even if it doesn't, lifelong learning is our goal. That's what we want to encourage, someone who continues to learn forever.
This is the only school the Bedford children have attended, and their use of computer technology is quite different from some of Mike Roberts' early experiences.
A lot of people said, well, just give the schools computers and that will have a dramatic effect on education. Of course, then we've had these exposés where the computers are found in the closets not being used at all because we didn't create an environment in which they could become part of the pedagogical environment of the schools. And one of the things that the network has done is because it immediately provides this horizontal peering for both the teachers and the students, is that it automatically brings learning into the new learning paradigms, as they're called, into the classroom. It forces people to think about what the kids are learning and what they want the kids to learn.
You write your name and your email address, and then your age and your interests. A lot of people write other things too. And then you get to be pen pals with them, I guess. Or key pals, as a lot of people call it.
At her home in Souk on Vancouver Island, 13-year-old Sarah uses the same technology in her education as she uses to link to the outside world. And for Mike Roberts, people who use the net the way Sarah does should be an example to the entire education industry.
We absolutely have to mobilize the people who do the teaching to embrace the technology in a way that can demonstrably improve the student learning experience. And we need to be much more self-critical than we have been in the past about that. I mean, we have seeded schools with computers and with networks without creating any consistent or quantitative basis of evaluation of the results of that. We have kids in schools that are spending time navigating the web without there being, with the notion that somehow or other sitting at a computer navigating the web is a good end. It isn't a good end unless it has, if you're talking about spending school time and school money on it, it's not a good end unless the student has a learning experience as a result.
I think educational journals have been talking of wall-less classrooms for some time. The difficulty, though, is again, like a prototype, demonstrating that almost a no directional curriculum is achievable, that students do succeed when they're not led in a linear fashion, saying we do this skill, next week we'll do this skill, next week we'll do this skill. So we need more prototypes, we need more projects where parents can sit back and with some confidence say, yes, I will get educated, but in this new way. All of us are experts in education because we've all been through it. And somewhat we're a little selective about what we remember about that education. So I think we have to start to explore what kinds of new technologies, such as the internet, can alter the old delivery system, because the students aren't going out into the old world.
Once upon a time in Crestwood, Kentucky, there was a classroom project to make a book about a fairy tale.
Cinderella was kind to everyone. She let a poor, cold stranger into the house. She helped her get warm. Later on...
And that project was turned into something magical, a web page. The fairy godmother was Michelle Petrie.
The Cinderella story was just a neat connection. It started with the classroom, my son's class taking a field trip to see the Louisville Ballet perform. And that class came back, and probably as the teacher had an activity that she would have done anyway with them, they extended it and wrote a group story. And all the children contributed to the process. Douglas did some of the drawings, some other children did the drawings. They had done group writing. I walked into the classroom one day and the teacher was holding it in her hand, and I said, "What is it?" And she showed it to me. I said, "This is neat. This is just really a neat process. I bet the kids would love to see their work up." She said, "Go ahead, take it." I brought it home, was so excited. The next day I went in and I said, "Look, it's on the web." And the teacher went in and could not believe it.
Michelle Petrie had already created a family homepage on the World Wide Web and knew that the University of Louisville could provide some technical support and play Prince Charming to Crestwood Cinderella.
They said, "Great, this is wonderful. Let's modify it a little bit. Let's use the push-pull feature and make the pages turn automatically." They took care of that end, the more technical end of it, came back, displayed it for the children, delighted, just delighted. The next day, they had already received 2 comments, one from Slovakia and another one from Utah, saying how wonderful their work was. The impact of those messages, I don't know if you can measure it. It was just, it gave the school the feeling like, we need to do this.
So her foot would fit in the slipper. Only Cinderella's foot would fit in the glass slipper.
School librarian Elaine Fortune also saw the need for the net and was instrumental in bringing it to Confederation High in Ottawa. Although she's recognized that it doesn't come without the risk of some potential for confusion.
I see a library as a much more organized resource. And the internet is more, at the moment, as if someone had torn all the covers off a pile of books and torn all the books apart, threw them in a big pile in the middle of the floor and said, "There now, everything you pick up is kind of interesting, and some of it's really fascinating, but it's not in a particularly organized form, certainly not when you first get started on the internet anyway." But there's something to be said for serendipitous discovery, and the internet's a great experience for that, I think. Just have plain...
It is that serendipity that might have some school administrators concerned, even afraid that the net would become the virtual equivalent of a Friday night high school dance, where there will always be somebody trying to sneak a smoke or a drink in the corner, thinking the chaperones aren't looking.
I would say that the only true safeguard that's in place is myself and my library staff, and the rest of the school staff, of course, are pretty vigilant and keep an eye on things. But on the other hand, I have to say that the students are pretty responsible, that they themselves respond to the use of the internet in the way that we want to, and we haven't really had to do any heavy policing.
Elaine Fortune took some pretty basic steps in protecting the connection from misuse. She made sure, for example, that access to the net was in a public place with an easy view, just in case.
It's near our offices, and it's in a heavily trafficked area. And not only are there a number of staff around, but there's also lots of student traffic. So if too big a crowd gathers, someone's bound to notice.
In Souk, Sarah has also learned to be careful.
There were some weird people that I was told to stop writing to, because, you know, people can be really weird sometimes on the internet.
You really never know who you're talking to, who you're writing to. It would be very easy to impersonate a teenage girl writing to another teenage girl. And one of her pen pals started talking about seeing a person masturbating and just strange things that wasn't anything really bizarre or anything. I mean, it could have happened that she saw someone masturbating in the park, but Sarah was uncomfortable, and she talked to me about it and just decided to not answer any more letters from that particular person, and that was the end of that for that problem.
Hey, look, there's something wrong with their page. It has that little image.
We have the computer in the kitchen where we can see what's going on screen. Although with girls, it's not the same problem as if we'd had a teenage boy, for instance. There may be a slightly different thing, but I would never put a computer with a modem in a bedroom where I couldn't see what was going on. It's not just pornography, it's hate literature. There's tons of hate literature out there. And if they come across pornography or hate literature, Dennis and I want to be here to discuss it with them. And the same as we discuss the things we see in TV or in books. We also we talk about everything and want to make sure that they feel free to talk to us about something that they see. But again, I just think it's really exaggerated. I've surfed a lot, and I just don't come across all this pornography that people are talking about. It's something that you have to go looking for, and it doesn't occur to these children, to my children, to go looking for it.
So there are some risks when it comes to education on the net, but the consensus seems to be that the benefits far outweigh the dangers. And for the educational professional keeping up with all this, there's little doubt that the internet is now poised to revolutionize not only the teaching, but the teachers.
The best teachers down through history have always been the ones who help the student learn on their own. You know, if you look at the Socratic method, it was a question of posing questions and bringing the student into a recognition of trying to assemble a body of knowledge into some sort of moral and social sense of citizenship and of good conduct for themselves. The way the internet will help do a modern day version of that is to shift the teacher more as a facilitator and not as a source of knowledge. We've gotten too far off on the scale where a student comes to the classroom environment with a notion that what's going to happen is that the teacher knows the facts. The teacher will tell the student the facts. The student will then have the facts, and that's learning. Not necessarily so.
For the kids of Confederation High who spent a big chunk of their year following two men on their trek across the Arctic Ocean, there is a simple and telling footnote to this story, for every one of them passed their final examinations. Not one failure. Now, the net certainly can't claim responsibility for that. The combination of good teaching and bright students might have had something to do with it, but there seems little doubt that even without official sanction, we are about to see all facets of education develop a whole new approach to life on the internet.
So the prince married Cinderella. Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after. The end.
A good place to blast off into the world of cyber learning on the World Wide Web is aptly named. It's called the Educational Launchpad, and it has links to the hottest spots for kids and is just a fun place to start exploring. Here's an area called Playground. Now, from here you can click onto interactive games and interactive toys. Here's one. the live artificial life page. Here's another link to a place for exploring sound and images in Earth and Sciences. How about this one, titled Comet Meets Jupiter? Ouch. And down here are several resources for teachers, like Armadillo's K through 12 site. The Armadillo site is set up for teachers, but anyone can go on a field trip from here. Think, for example, I'd like to go to the National Zoo. Fishnet is a site for people who like to swim against the current. Of course, we're talking about teenagers here. Fishnet helps teens haul up all kinds of information or even cast a new word out into cyberspace by using the Street Speak Dictionary. You can also jump in and look at these sites for yourself by visiting our site. If you have access to the World Wide Web, here's how to find us. http://www.pbs.org. Until next time, I'm Scott Simon.
In a network of computers, it's not the MIPS and chips and whatnot that's most important. It's what goes on between the people using them that makes them really powerful. A reminder from Sun Microsystems, proud to support this PBS program.
This is PBS.